Hello and welcome to Peanutopia. In this video I want to show you how I made one of the peanut creatures come to life. So I started with PEAT and based on this concept art I created him in 3D and finally ended up with this test animation. First of all, I modeled everything in Blender. Starting with a round cube, I added the eye holes and also deleted one half of the object to add a mirror modifier. Then I roughly traced the shape of the cheeks and added the mouth. For the mouth, I wasn't sure about the design. At first, I made it as a separate object that sticks on top of the head. But after working a little bit more on the whole head shape, I decided that it looks better when it's a hole modeled into the geometry. Then I kept on extruding the mesh downwards to add the rest of the body, and also adding more loop cuts for additional details, like for example the chin that is sticking out of the face. Afterwards, I had to fix some topology issues because the cuts were going through the whole body, but I only needed the detail at the face. So I worked on the transition between the high poly and low poly areas. And I also had to fix the edge flow because some parts of the topology were a little bit messed up. Then I added the hair part at the top of the head and also started to model the hands with the 3 fingers and the arms. And I also reused the hands to transform them into the feet and added some meshes for the eyes. With this base done, I sculpted the peanut structure into the mesh. So at first I duplicated it and added a multi-res modifier to it. And there I started with a rough version of the lines and the cell pattern. Then I kept on refining the shapes to make them appear clearer, and also I didn't like the sharp corners, so I made them all round. But it all still looked too smooth for me. So I made some adjustments with a textured brush using a cloud texture to give a little bit more structure to the model. Then I used this sculpted version to bake a normal map out of it, which I could then apply to the low poly version. So I made some UV seams and unwrapped the low poly mesh. And then in the shader editor, I also added a new texture for the normal map. And I set the levels of the multi-res modifier to 0. Then with the texture and the mesh selected, and also with the render engine set to cycles, I went to the bake settings and there I checked the bake from multi-res button. And I also chose normal as the bake type. And this finished normal map was then applied to the low poly mesh, also with a subdivision modifier to make the geometry a little bit smoother. Finally, I also UV unwrapped the eyes, the hands and the legs to prepare them for the texturing process. In Substance Painter, I started with a peanut colored base. And I also imported the normal map for the body to have a reference for the position of the holes and lines for the peanut shell pattern. Then for the colors, I added the red cheeks and kept on painting some darker brown parts and light beige highlights with different watercolor brushes. And I also added a soft reddish touch into the body to give it more color variation. For the arms and legs, I added the red and light parts, and I wanted the areas that are sticking out of the body to have more contrast, so I painted them black. Then I also added the face details based on the concept art, like the eyes with the purple iris and their outlines, and also the mouth, including a black outline. Next, I imported these base color textures into Blender. For the body and the arms, I also turned up the roughness pretty high, and I decreased the intensity of the normal map for the shell texture. For the eyes, I also added a clear coat for a shiny and glossy effect. And because I wanted the arms and legs to also have a little bit more structure, I generated a normal map out of the base color texture using this normal map online generator on GitHub. And I assigned it to the arms and the legs. With that done, the static model was finished, and that's how it looks all the way around. To be able to create a first animation test, I needed a rig. So I used some parts of the Rigify basic human rig and fitted to the character. And I have to optimize this in many aspects, especially for more complex animations, but for now it was just fine. Then to generate some facial movements, I also added a few shape keys to the face. So under the object data properties, I first added a shape key for the base and then another one for a closed mouth. And with this second shape key selected, I was able to adjust the mesh in edit mode for this position. Then I did the same thing to open the mouth and also for each eye to be able to close it. When everything was prepared to start animating, I made some tests with different movements until I ended up with an animation that I liked. For the background, I added a cove with a graphic shader, using a shader to RGB node and blending different colors together. And I also wanted to add some black lines, so I added a greased pencil stroke and moved the body and the arms and legs into a line art collection. Then with the grease pencil object selected, I added a line art modifier, chose the line art collection and assigned a black material to it. And I also decreased the line thickness. After a few small tweaks, it was ready to render. And finally, the little waving animation was finished. And it's so cool to breathe life into a character that's been in your head for such a long time. So I'm really excited about the next animations. But at first I want to move on with the story concept. That's why next time I'll be talking about the second scene, the one that connects the first scene where the peanut creatures appear with the desert scene. So hope to see you there. Thanks and bye.